Conservative leader Andrew Scheer managed to grow the party by over 20 seats. He won the popular vote. He took the Liberal majority down to a minority. But any way you look at it, he promised to win a majority government. And now multiple Conservative sources have told me and many others that there are deep concerns about the leadership. Mr. Scheer faces a mandatory leadership review in April, but he is now standing by his social conservative positions on abortion and same-sex marriage. Can a leader with those views win a general election? And with 66% of the Canadian population voting for parties who support a price on carbon, does the Conservative Party have to rethink their issues around that as well? Let's bring in the scrum to talk about that and challenges facing Mr. Trudeau. Tonda McCharles is a senior reporter with the Toronto Star. Joyce Napier is CTV's Ottawa bureau chief. Craig Oliver is CTV's chief political commentator. None of them have slept, and this for the last 40 days. And this round, our special guest is the former Foreign Affairs Minister, John Baird. Okay, great to see everybody back, wide awake. I know after an election, every party declares victory, no matter how bad it got. And I've heard all the spin, John Baird, and I'll start with you. There's a case to be made that Andrew Scheer did well, as I've just outlined, but he didn't win as he promised. What went wrong?
Well, I mean, I think you always learn a lot from every campaign, win or lose. I think we've got to remember that this was a very, a majority government party has never been defeated in its second go since 1935, and the economy is doing strong. Obviously, we were all disappointed. Andrew has said chief amongst them is himself. But I think we've got to look at it. I mean, this is the biggest official opposition ever elected in Canadian history. And second, we won the popular vote. So while we didn't go as far as we wanted to, I think we didn't do as badly as others had predicted. I ran with Mike Harris and with Stephen Harper. Both of them were unsuccessful in their first bids for power. They came back more experienced, stronger, and were much more ready to govern and govern well. And I think Andrew has that capacity, and I think there's going to be a lot of support for him in the party.
Well, Craig, I mean, that is one interpretation. He could just do it all over again and wait it out, and there's an inevitable rush of power. But what is the if there is an obstacle, what is it?
Well, after hearing John, I'm almost convinced I'm about to change my mind. He was always a persuasive politician. First, I think the biggest problem was he was out of tune with the spirit of the times. He got nailed time and again and should have seen it coming on abortion, on gay rights, and he just didn't seem to be able to react quickly on his feet. And I think those were the biggest problems.
But I don't actually think those were the only problems. A big part of the Conservative Party under Andrew Scheer's problem was that he ran as Stephen Harper, basically. And people didn't buy that he was Stephen Harper and didn't buy that he would keep a lock on the social conservatives in his caucus were they to come to power. And, you know, even some of Stephen Harper's aides said if even Stephen Harper wouldn't have run as Stephen Harper this time. They didn't have a credible climate change plan that voters believed. They might believe it's a credible plan, but the voters didn't buy it. And he failed to appeal to Quebecers. He has a huge problem in Quebec.
Not only that, but he also lost votes in all of the biggest cities in the country. That's where the future is. That's where the population is going. If the Conservatives can't find a way to capture all of these, especially young people in the big cities, they've got a big long-term problem.
Look, he did come back with a bigger team, and that's the truest thing he said in his speech. It is a bigger team, and he did get the popular vote. The thing is that he lost everything else. During the campaign, I followed him for a while, and I asked him that question, after blackface and brownface, after SNC Lavalin, after the fact that his main opponent was bruised and bleeding, how come he was still neck and neck with him? How come he could not break free despite the errors and the huge errors of the other side? And that's the problem. And, you know, there's only one person you can blame that on, and it's the leader. And I think that their review will be a very interesting one. And let's see if the Conservatives say out loud what they are telling us on the phone and in hush-hush words. Do they want a new leader? And is that what they need, a new leader?
There is John Baird, there's a mandatory leadership review in April. That is what the Constitution of the party says. There's no way around that, apparently. Do Conservatives have to reflect and recalibrate on some of these fundamental issues?
I think there's no doubt we've got to learn and listen to the voices that when Canadians spoke on Election Day. Particularly, I look in suburban Canada, where Stephen Harper was able to win big, and where we fell short. You know, I'm a supporter of Andrew Scheer. I'm not a social conservative. I differ on his personal views on those issues. But I had no concern or no fear that he would seek to reopen either gay rights or with respect to abortion rights. I think what he's got to do is, preparing for the next election campaign, is have a better narrative and be crystal clear, so that the fear mongering doesn't cause voters to pause and be concerned. This is a great trick of the Liberal Party. They bring out these boogeyman issues. 30 years ago, it would have been, oh, the Conservatives get elected, they're going to get rid of seniors' old age programs, and now it's on these social conservative issues. There's no doubt that that was a concern among many voters, and the party needs a better narrative on that. And I think Andrew will look to that election result and perhaps be more definitive and have a better narrative.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, John, they've played this book before, but Andrew Scheer at times didn't seem ready. But let me just pivot over to Justin Trudeau. He's the guy that won. It's a strong minority, but he got taken down from a majority to a minority a year ago. Thought there was a lock-in for a majority. Partway through this campaign, people thought he might lose it. What was his biggest challenge, and what does he face going ahead?
His biggest challenge, and in this respect, the Conservatives were very successful over the course of the past 4 years, chastising Mr. Trudeau for the virtue signaling, preaching that somehow he was holier than thou, that Liberals were holier than thou, and that they had a lock on principle and ethics, and the rest of the world, didn't. They were successful. They I think, chipped away at the paint, at the veneer of Trudeau as the great, lefty progressive rock star in the world. Right. And I think in the campaign, when blackface happened, that was a short-term stumble, but it started to reinforce, the Conservatives' portrayal of him. So I think actually Mr. Trudeau struggled because somehow that campaign was still all centered on him, wasn't it? Yeah. That he branded the party again. And so I think they have to read that as a kick in the pants, and they have to, I think, actually get down to the hard work of governing domestically now and forget the international globe-trotting and appealing to Vogue and Vanity Fair and Rolling Stone.
And what I think both leaders lacked, both Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau, was authenticity. I think that they were on message track all the time, no matter what the questions were across the country, no matter what the issues were, no matter how heart-wrenching or not heart-wrenching, they would not answer the questions and stayed on message track. Who are these two guys that want to run the country? Was the questions that we were asking them as we followed them, and the answers never came. And there were many, many things written about that. So are they authentic? Who are they? And why can't they speak from the heart?
Trudeau's biggest problem, I think is that he has to rebuild trust. He also has to focus on patience and focus, neither of which he's ever been very good at. But I don't think he's in much trouble as many people think he is. Yeah, he got shut out in 2 prairie provinces, but remember, they got shut out on him too, and they need him because they all say their biggest imperative is a pipeline. He owns the pipeline. He's the guy that's fighting 3 opposition parties to defend that pipeline. They better not savage Trudeau too much because they'll weaken him and they won't get their pipeline.
All right, last word to you, John Baird. You're the only guy here that's been in a minority government with Stephen Harper. So what challenges does Justin Trudeau in a minority government face?
I don't think he faces the challenges that people think. He has a very strong minority, and frankly, what is the NDP going to do? Vote against him in his throne speech no matter what's in it, and then have Andrew Scheer installed as Prime Minister? What are they going to do? Go to another election where they have neither the resources or the capacity to be able to campaign it? So I think for the short term, he's in pretty strong shape. But Canadians put him on probation. They have clipped his wings, and I think the Liberal Party and the Cabinet will be much more aggressive at pushing back at some of the virtue signaling, the political correctness, and the hypocrisy that has been a hallmark of this government.
Man, it is going to get really interesting. We'll see how he governs as a minority. John Baird, great to have you back on the program.